Welcome to Excel Lesson 2. In this lesson, we're going to be building on the formulas and functions that we learned in our last lesson. So this spreadsheet that I've pulled up is practice lesson 2. So if you want to follow along, you'll want to have that on a partial screen on your computer. This spreadsheet represents a business that has business dealings with companies in different countries. And so we have the quarterly gains, and we need to figure the total annual gains. So if you think practically on that, we're just adding the 4 quarters together to get our total earnings for the year. So the easiest way to do that is go in my destination cell, auto sum, marching ants. Yes, that's what we want to add. So we click it again, and then we can just use the fill handle to pull that total down. Next, it's asking for a 20% rise. We're looking specifically at the numbers here in this total row, and we're speculating how much, if we increased our sales by 20% in the first quarter, how much would that be? And then we're going to carry that through to our annual sales. So this is another one where you've got to kind of piece it apart and think about what you're doing. So I'm finding 20% of this total, so that is always times. So equals 0.20 times the total, but that will only give me the amount of the increase, not the total amount plus the increase. So I'm going to have to put that in parentheses. Whoops, wrong side. And then I'm going to add this back on to my total. So this will give me my total plus 20%. Before I hit enter, there's one more thing that I want to do with this formula. In your assignments, it's going to ask you to round certain numbers to 0 decimal places or 2 decimal places. So we need to insert a round function here. And that's going to go right after our equals sign. So we're going to type in the word round. And when we see it, we double click. And then notice here it tells us what we need. After the round, we insert the number we're rounding and then a comma and then the number of digits we're rounding to. So we're actually going to enter another set of parentheses. Okay, so it's viewing this whole thing as the number that we're rounding. Then we enter a comma, and I want this rounded to 0 decimal places. Notice as soon as I put in the comma, this part, the number of digits, becomes bold, so I know which argument of that parameter that I'm on. So then I hit my 0, close parentheses. Always make sure when you're dealing with multiple sets of parentheses that you have an even number. And here I have my black left and right, and then my green left and right. So each set of parentheses has a match. Okay, when I hit enter, then my value returns without decimal places. You probably want to go back and listen to that part again just so you understand how the round function works. It's not hard, but there are several steps to it. Now my average. For this one, I want the average of Q1 for all of my countries, but I don't want to include this total. So I'm going to start typing in equals average, and then I just select down through USA for my range. Then maximum, we learned about this in our first lesson, equals max. And once again, I'm defining this range, my countries, and minimum equals min. Now I could have taken these one by one and used the fill handle, but it's a lot faster to do the one column all together and then grab the fill handle and copy it over that way. The next thing that I'm going to do is I want to calculate the same thing but with a 30% rise. So instead of retyping these 4 cells here, I'm going to copy and paste them. So I make my selection with my hollow white plus arrow, and then I'm going to come up to copy on my home ribbon, and I just want this a couple of cells down, and then I'm going to click paste. I hit escape to turn off the marching ants, and then I want to come in and change this 20% to a 30%. So I'm going to go up on my formula bar and delete my 2 and put in a 3. Now I'm going to do the exact same formula that I used up here, only instead of a 0.2 in this part of it, I'm going to have a 0.3. So I'm doing again equals 0.30 times my total here. I'm going to put that in parentheses because it has to happen first, and it's its own little formula. And then I add that back on to my total. And then the last thing I want to do is insert a round function. So I type in round. I need parentheses here. This is my number that I'm rounding, followed by a comma, and I want to round to 0 digits, and then close parentheses. Then again, I'm going to do my average. And my maximum. This is actually redundant. Notice that none of these numbers change, but it's good practice. And then I can use my fill handle to copy all of those formulas over. Okay, the next thing I want to do is project an increase for my total annual sales. So in G1, we're going to say we have a change, and in G2 we're going to say 1.2, and then we're just going to do a what if analysis here. So in this column here, we're going to project what our total sales will be if they increase by 20%. Now I'm going to make this formula the way we've been doing it, and there's something different about the way this one will be set up. So we're going to do it the wrong way first, which is the way that you would do it because you don't know any better, and then we'll do it the right way. So I'm doing a percentage, so it's always times, and it ends up increasing my sales from 23,000 to 28,000. Now I want to copy that formula down to my other cells, but it only works on this top one. That is because there is nothing underneath this 1.2. In all of the other examples that we've done, there's always data above or below that feeds into that formula. Remember back in the first lesson we talked about Excel being smart and changing formulas relative to where you're dragging your fill handle. But in this case we don't want a relative cell formula. We need an absolute cell formula. So I'm going to delete those, and we're going to do this again, and this time I'm going to take my total times my percent change, and I'm going to hit the F4 key on my keyboard. When I do that, it puts dollar signs before the G and before the 2, and it locks that cell into place. So what I'm saying is I want this number times this, and then this number times the same number, and then this number times the same number. So I want, when I use my fill handle, I want this cell to change. I want to go from row 4 to 5 to 6 and so on, but I want it locked into this cell using an absolute reference, and that's what these dollar signs do. So now when I pull down my fill handle, I get correct numbers. The next thing that I want to do is enter a formula that will count how many countries I have right here. So I'm actually going to put my label down here at the bottom and put in a label. I'm going to widen my column here. And the function that I'm going to use for this is just called count. So equals count. Double click that when it comes up. And I'm counting how many countries I have. I can't select these because they're not numbers. So I just need to select numbers that correlate with the countries. I'm not going to include my total because it's not a country. Once I have my range, I hit enter, and my total number of countries is 8. Then the last thing that I need to show you for your assignments is how to create a direct cell reference. So what if somewhere over here we want some of this data to stand out? If we said total projected increase of 20%, we just want this to stand out. Even though I have this number here, I want to repeat it over here just so that it's away from the other data and can draw people's attention. So I just want this number to appear here. So all I'm going to do is type equals and then reference this number. And then if this number happened to change, like if I changed my increase to 30%, these all change, and then this also changes. So again, it's really smart to create formulas and direct references so that when your data changes, everything changes with it. Those direct cell references can also work with text. So if for some reason I needed these two cells to both be the same, cell A4 and cell I17, it will repeat that. And then if I decide to type in a different country, like Switzerland instead of Australia, then it changes here as well. So on your assignment, when it asks you to create a direct cell reference, that's all it means is equals and then click on the source cell. And that is the end of lesson 2. I know you'll do great.